Houston Texans, Houston Rockets, Houston Dynamo, Houston everything, Houston born and raised, H-Town Rebel Space Cadet Sports.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, folks of all stripes, and distinguished guests, put your hands together for the Space Cadet Sports Podcast. Houston, we have Paul Salazar Jr.
Hey y'all, welcome back to the Space Cadet Sports Podcast, your Houston sports podcast for diehard Houston sports fans from a die-hard Houston sports fan. I'm, of course, Paul Salazar Jr., your favorite die-hard fan podcaster. I'm a comedian, actor, creative multi-hyphenate, and of course, I'm a proud Houston native, and I have the receipts to prove it. I have known more Houston sports heartache than you'll ever know. Not really. I know we've kind of been all in it together. I've spent the last decade or so as a comedy writer in LA, and now, I'm podcasting. That's what happens when you hit 10 years out here. You just absent-mindedly start calling it The 10 instead of I-10, and you start podcasting. Welcome to said podcast. The Space Cadet Sports Podcast started as a passion project because most media is infuriating as a die-hard long-term fan of Houston sports. Here we aren't doom and gloom, casual Houston fans, or worse, the national media haters or avoiders. We love our teams and want to root them on, but we also try to discuss the ins and outs of them without too much homerism. The key word here is try. I'd like to welcome returning listeners and welcome new listeners to what my brother calls the Paul Broadpod Ball Blog. Hey, brother, check out spacecadetsports.substack.com for the full blog experience, or the full blog experience, depending on your interpretation of how I pronounce that word. Shout out to brother Jesse. Shout out to Arrested Development fans. We are recording this transmission here in sunny Los Angeles, where I'm joined by my co-host and co-producer, the Roz to my Frasier. Carla, the dog, is here with me. Long-term listeners of the podcast know that she may get on mic from time to time. That's right, she's got the hot takes on this podcast. I'm the mild, vanilla Clark Kent. She's Superman. On this episode, folks, it was a tough day for Houston sports. We're going to talk Cougars. We're going to talk Astros. We're going to talk a little bit about the aftermath of the Rockets-Warriors game. The little chirpers on the internet are going crazy. But before we get into all of that, I do want to say a good day, mates, to all of the Australian listeners out there. If this is your first time listening to the Space Cadet Sports Podcast, welcome. I'm glad you're here to help soothe your emotions. H-Town, I'm here for you. If this is your first time, we like to brag that when this podcast first started, our very first episode shot up the Australian baseball charts. We were just outside of the top 100 of Australian baseball podcasts, and we're trying to boost those numbers. So if you know any Australians, let them know I say good day, mate. Let them know that they can listen to this podcast to help us out. Folks, I'm being silly. I'm being ridiculous. I'm a silly goose. This podcast will always be a little irreverent, a little ridiculous. But I'm leaning into it more now because, frankly, we need it. Last night was a tough one for us, H-Town. Houston sports fans out there, I hope you're doing well. I hope you were able to get to work on time. I hope you had some extra Shipley's donuts to help you drown the sorrows. I personally am drinking a cup of coffee here early in the morning in Los Angeles. I haven't had my breakfast yet, but I have a feeling I might eat some emotions this morning. I'm sure you might feel the same way because let's not bury the lead. Let's talk about our Houston Cougars. The Houston Cougars lost in the Natty. They lost the championship to Florida last night in truly an incredible basketball game that just didn't wind up in Houston's favor. Florida ends up winning 65-63. They really took a page out of the Houston Cougars book. They never gave up on the game. The first half of the game was very much in Houston's favor. The second half of the game, Florida came back and played very physical. They're playing really tough defense. They might have struggled offensively, but Florida just kept going at it and kept finding a way to compete, and they clawed their way back to tie the game in the last couple minutes there. I believe the stat is something like, I believe it's something like 64 seconds. I believe the Gators only led and obviously had the lead for about 64 seconds there is what I'm trying to say. I'm being hesitant because I'm just not sure on that stat. I read that somewhere, but I didn't look it up, and now I'm like, should I even say that? Look, that's what a meme said, so the meme could have been wrong. I don't want to be spreading misinformation, but at the end of the day, I watched the game with my girls. I watched it with Carla, the dog, obviously, and my partner, Sarah. Sarah and Carla went to to another room. They went and took a phone call in the other room because the Cougars were playing so dominantly in the first half. They felt pretty confident about it. Now look, they're not the big Houston Cougars fans in the house. Look, Carla will sit down for an Astros game. She understands that ritual. She was getting treats throughout the game. Carla's favorite player is Francis. She has a little stuffed animal that we call Francis, so she kept hearing that name and kept getting excited. So anytime Francis had a big defensive play, he had that big defensive block that led to transition points for a huge slam. He had some big plays. Whenever Francis made a big play, Carla would get a TREAT. I can't say it. I can't say it because then I'd have to take a break in the podcast and go get one. But all that to be said is they're not the diehards here. They were supporting me, wearing my lucky beanie and watching the game. Me and Jim Nance, just being nervous and watching in our lucky gear. It was a tough one. The first half was great. The second half, like I said, Florida came back. They played a lot more physically. And honestly, something that didn't help completely was the refs did kind of change the way they officiated. They were calling smaller things. Houston ran into some foul trouble. It kind of threw their groove off a little bit and tipped the scale a little bit in favor of Florida. You can't, I'm not going to sit here. The team isn't making excuses about officiating, and neither will I. I'm just saying that because I know it's a narrative out there. I know, it's a narrative because you see it with your two eyes, and you could see that the officials officiated differently in the second half. However, they still were fairly consistent in the second half, so I'm not trying to, put my tinfoil hat on or anything. It's just that's part of what changed the momentum for the University of Houston Cougars in the second half. Florida just kept chipping away at the lead. They kept playing chippy themselves, and towards the end, the Houston Cougars offense just ran out of gas, and it's completely heartbreaking because during this run, if you've been listening to the podcast, I've been saying about this team that they have the defense, they have the grit, they have the rebounding, they have the determination. The only thing that this team was truly lacking, if you're looking at them, if you're looking at the video game ratings, is their offense was just not quite there in some moments, and it got us through. We got through a season fantastically. The Cougars had a great season. They changed conferences and won the conference. This team is incredible. But when it comes to playing against the top talent in the nation, when they started playing against Duke and Florida, you started to worry a little bit about that offense because Duke and Florida had incredible size. And that's not to say like Tennessee didn't have good size either, but like Duke and Florida, I knew they were bigger. I said this about the Duke game, but when you saw them against the Cougars and when you saw them physically out there on the floor, you saw how much bigger those prospects really were, and how that size helps with defense for the other team and spelled trouble for the offense for Houston. In that those last couple of possessions, the second to last possession the Cougars had, you could really see that. The Cougars passed the ball to like 3 different ball handlers. They were trying to work some kind of high kind of pick and roll or screen and roll, really high screens. Nothing was really happening. The defense was playing really physical and not allowing anything to happen, and that was insanely infuriating. Obviously, I don't want to talk about it too long, but the last play of the game with Sharp, essentially trying not to travel, jumping, not passing or shooting, and having to kind of just let the ball cascade away is not what you want to see. Having a game in that way is absolutely heartbreaking. You feel bad for the player. You feel bad, for the team. And, it's the Cougars. When you see it happen to another team, you feel bad for them, or you go into troll mode and you make some jokes like a lot of people have been doing. But, they're making these jokes because their team isn't in the championship game. Their team that make the natty. So that's what you do as a troll. You make jokes. But truly, this isn't that absurd for a college basketball game to end this way. It's tough, and it's something that the Cougars were saying. I believe it was Cryer, LJ Cryer, guard for the Cougars, was saying that they're supporting Sharp. They're rallying behind Sharp, because at the end of the day, I know I don't have the quote up here, but essentially Sharp isn't to blame here. Cryer is saying, because that wasn't the only game-winning opportunity. The Cougars just, in my text group with all of my Cougar theater friends, shout out to the text chain out there. If you're listening, keep your chin up, friends. Oh man, it was tough. But in our text thread, we were just saying how they just needed one more bucket. They just truly just needed one more bucket, and it was just so hard to see towards the end that they just couldn't find a way to get one more. If they would have just got one more bucket, it would have really changed the dynamic of the last couple minutes of that game. Unfortunately for the Cougars, whether it's Kelvin Sampson not drawing up the right play, whether it's the Cougars, personnel on the floor, being exhausted by the tournament, not having enough to kind of get them through that last couple of plays, whatever it is, whatever your narrative is that you're following, whatever you think it is, it was tough. And, that Kelvin Sampson just kind of stoically staring off into a distance, that kind of is going to be my meme going forward for a while, because that's definitely how I felt. It was just tough because you're so proud of this team. They work so damn hard. They're such a good, fun team to cheer for, and it just wasn't our night. It was our season, but it wasn't our night. And, that's tough. It's a tough pill to swallow. It's tough to keep your head up high. There's a lot of, in this day and age, your team gets to a place like this, and if you don't win, all that happens is you get attacked by ESPN and Bleacher Report and all of the social media accounts. They're all blasting. Whether it's Florida pride or Houston hate. It's tough to see, and it just feels like this is the tax on success. What we're feeling right now, Houston, and I can say this as a long-term fan of the Houston Astros. The Astros have been wildly successful for the past decade. They haven't always won the World Series, but they've been wildly successful. And part of the tax of success, of a team is that if they don't win the big game, people will clown. People will make their jokes. If they don't win the big game, you're going to feel emotional. You're going to feel sad. You're going to feel angry. You're going to feel all of those unresolved emotions that you feel about your tax portfolio, that you feel about the wild, unconstitutional things going on in the country. All of those unresolved feelings about your children or your significant other, they come out when when the team has a terrible loss in a big moment. And I'm here to tell you, it's okay to be emotional today. It's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to all the feelings you're feeling. But don't go too crazy with them, right? Don't go too high and don't go too low when you're feeling these big emotions. It's probably a good advice generally, but especially with sports. Remember, there's bigger things out there in this world. There's bigger things in your life. Sports is supposed to be a healthy outlet for your frustrations and your emotions. Don't let it become unhealthy. Don't let it become toxic where you're attacking other people or where you're attacking the Coogs. Kelvin Sampson and the University of Cougars, the University of Houston Cougars deserve some praise. They deserve flowers for this amazing season. I really feel like, yeah, it's tough when it feels like it was our season, but it just wasn't our night. And life goes on. Things move on. Jawan Roberts, forward for the Cougars, my personal favorite on the team this season. He was saying after the game in an interview that the toughest thing about him isn't the loss that the Cougars suffered. It's the fact that he's never going to be able to put the jersey on again and play with his teammates. This moment was a moment in Jawan Roberts' life that he'll never be able to have back. He's not sitting here thinking about he's not going to have it back, he didn't get the W. He's thinking about that he can't experience that again. Both the highs and the lows. Being on the team with his teammates. He's now going off to have a professional career in some kind of capacity. I really don't know what that could be. I'm not a basketball scout. I'm not going to sit here and act like I know what it could be. But the fact of the matter is, when something like this happens, I think some kind of perspective to have on it is kind of what Jawan Roberts was going through in that moment. It's like, this team was incredible. We can sit here and sulk about the loss, but we just, we got to experience this thing that we will never get to experience in the same way ever again. This Houston Cougars run to the championship game that might not have ended the way we wanted, but that run that they gave us, that experience they gave us, I'm not going to have that again. And it was a lot of fun. And things like that, they might not be once in a lifetime experiences. This is something the Cougars could realistically do again sometime in the future with Kelvin Sampson at the helm of this team. But still, to be able to sit back for a minute and kind of, not to grieve it, to be completely mournful of the season, but grieve and enjoy and be happy with the ride and kind of mourn the loss of the season for good and for bad, and to be like, we won't have that again, but we should be really grateful for that run that we got. This is not something that happens very frequently. When I left the University of Houston, it was a commuter school. It was still jokingly being called Cougar High. When I left the university, everybody was working really hard to change it into a top tier school, to have better research funding, to have better athletics. And the university did a good job of getting their teams to places that they can compete and getting better funding. And, to see this turnaround, to go from Phi Slamma Jamma in the 80s something that I was too young to really experience. Believe it or not, I know a lot of you think I'm as old as Moses, but I was too young to experience Phi Slamma Jamma. But, to go from that and to go from the University of Houston just not really having a competitive basketball team to getting to see them focusing on that, hiring Clyde Drexler, that maybe work out exactly, but trying to get that prestige back in the school, getting Kelvin Sampson, to be the coach, years ago. They were building to success, and this is something that doesn't happen very frequently. I know it's easy to be upset. It's easy to be frustrated, and there is room for frustration and being upset. But this team really gave us a lot, and at the end of the day, they played outside of the expectations that we really had for them, and hopefully this organization, this success will continue. It doesn't look like they're willing to just be like, well, it's all over, it will never happen again. No, this is a mentality that they will continue to have. I don't have the quote in front of me, but Kelvin Sampson was like, this is essentially, we're going to refocus and regroup. It's being a Houston Cougar is an everyday thing. It is not a giving up thing. This team will be back. This team won't give up. And while we might be losing some players or, things might change, this team is incredible, and they will play competitively in some tournaments in the future. And I desperately hope they can have a chance to come back. Win one for Roberts, my guys. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back to talk about some Houston Astros.
Houston Astros, Houston Texans, Houston Rockets, Houston Dynamo, Houston everything, Houston, born and raised, H-Town Rebel Space Cadet Sports.
Welcome back, folks. We are here to talk about the other Houston sporting event that happened last night. It was a tough one for me, obviously, as a diehard Astros fan. Having two games on at the same time. Obviously, we watched the basketball game. A national championship doesn't come around as much as some game against the Mariners in April. I knew the Mariners were very excited about this game. To us, it's another regular season game. However, once the game ended, I did switch over to watch the Astros, and the Astros were down 2-1 through the seventh inning. In the eighth inning, they were able to find some offense, and it felt really good, folks. Like, honestly, it was a tougher game for the Houston Astros. Hayden Wesneski, if you're nasty, really pitched a great game. He started in this game. He went 7 innings. I'm pulling it up right now. 7 innings, 3 hits on 2 runs, 2 of them earned, 5 strikeouts on 82 pitches. His ERA after 2 starts is 3.75, and his WHIP is .67. Hayden Wesneski might not be this top of the rotation world beater type pitcher, but this guy, if he keeps pitching well, this guy could sneakily be like a Yusei Kikuchi type addition. He could really be a guy that just really solidifies the middle to late part of the rotation. Wesneski really went out there and pitched really well against the Mariners. I was super excited about it. 2 runs in 7 innings. After the bullpen pitching 2 long bullpen outings, we really needed some length from our starting pitching. And when you're asking the 5th starter to give you length, you start to worry about that. I mentioned Yusei Kikuchi. Yusei Kikuchi was a guy that was good at going through the lineup a couple of times. Third time through the lineup, you kind of wanted to figure out, let's see how he does. If this doesn't look too great, if they start getting some hits, we might have to pull him out. Wesneski was able to go the distance in this game. It was really good to see him get that length off of 82 pitches, especially after watching Arrighetti and Ronel Blanco pitch a lot of pitches early in the game and start to worry about him. So Wesneski, while this might have been a 4-3 loss for the Houston Astros, the fact that Wesneski went 7 innings was a win for the Houston Astros. Trust me, fam. We did not want to start throwing our bullpens out there for 2 games in this Mariners series because we got really behind with starting pitchers not eating innings. Hayden Wesneski put on his bib, and that boy ate, and that is a win for me. Look, the Astros lost by 1. Yeah, at the end of the season, we're going to be wanting an extra win in the divisional race. I know. I'm aware of that. But the Houston Astros and baseball needs to be taken as a long-term thing. Everybody, I said it before, I'll say it again. Houston's full of football fans. In football, you only get a small handful of games. So all of those games are analyzed very, very thoroughly. Every moment is really big because there's only a dozen to 17 games depending on what league you're in or so. So all of these moments, all of these football moments get blown out, and you go on the radio on Monday and you Monday morning quarterback. For baseball, it's a much longer season. There's 162 games. If you treat every game and every moment like it's a football game moment, you're going to drive yourself crazy. You're just going to be infuriated and pop a blood vessel in your temple or something. Calmate is what I always say. So I'm looking at the positives here in this tough day. The one big positive is Wesneski going 7 innings. I'm not going to talk about the rest of the pitching right now. I might as well. Obviously, after 7 innings, after the Astros took the lead in the game in the 8th inning, let's see. They take the lead in the 8th inning. I believe yesterday that was Jose Altuve hit a home run in the 6th inning, I believe, in that game. Sorry, I don't have my notes up here, so I'm going off of my memory. But yeah, Jose Altuve solo homer in the 6th. That was 2-1 at that point, and in the 8th inning, there was a bases loaded situation. Christian Walker hit a ball to the third baseman Dylan Moore, who kind of fumbled that, had a fielding error. Jose Altuve and Jake Myers both scored on that error, putting the Astros up 3-2. And this is just another little thing I want to point out real quick to all of y'all out there who are freaking out over ball transfers for Jose Altuve. If you watch baseball, not even watch baseball, just watch like the recaps for the games at the end of the day, just to like little Sports Center recaps at the end of the day, and watch how many players make fielding errors in the sport of baseball. I mean, hell, just watch Harrison Bader, who we just saw, who is an outfielder, who is legit an outfielder, bumble and fumble around in the outfield, in left field specifically. In this past week, I've seen Harrison Bader make 2 terrible plays in left field. But that's more than fine. Everybody doesn't worry about that. It's when Jose Altuve makes an error in left field. It's get this guy out of here. What is the team doing? It's like all of a sudden you see Jose Altuve make an error and you're like, I know more about baseball than the Astros front office. Look, calmate, okay? Jose Altuve is going to be a fine left fielder. It might not be ideal. We might want him to play more second than left at the end of the day once we see what he is like in left, but I think he'll be a fine left fielder. And honestly, this team needs him to be a fine left fielder so that we have infield defense as he starts to age. Jose Altuve is not as young as he used to be, and he's getting older, and he's going to be on the Astros for some time. So it's good that this is happening. I know that none of y'all like change. You're scared. Oh no, I'm scared of change. I don't like change. Change can be good sometimes. Sometimes change is painful and transitional. This will be okay. But let's get to the pitching here for the Houston Astros before I go completely off on my soapbox here. Obviously, the Astros went up, and in the eighth inning, Taylor Scott was brought in to pitch. And folks, Taylor Scott has not looked good so far in the beginning of this young season. He was only able to go 1/3 of an inning. He picked up the loss for the game. He gave up 2 runs on two of them earned. Those were off of 2 walks that Taylor Scott got. He walked 2 players and got a third out while pitching 16 pitches. His ERA on the young season, very small sample size, but not looking good so far at 6.75 and 2 ERA with a 2.63 WHIP. I think Taylor Scott is having some command issues. He's having some. He's going to have to make some tweaks to what he does. I haven't, it's been such a small sample size. I've seen him in spring training. He didn't look quite as sharp. I'm seeing him in April and March here. He definitely doesn't look as sharp as he did last season. Where a lot of relief pitching is volatile. It's really hard to be a relief pitcher. Obviously, not that I know from experience, not that you would know from experience, but relief pitching, you go out there, it's very limited sample size. You don't have it's very, very focused hitting at that point. Later in the game, and you don't get to be in for very long. You get 1 inning, you get 3 outs, you get 3 batters sometimes. So the sample size and the data takes a while to accumulate to get to a point where we really can extrapolate what is happening with that pitcher based off of the data. So, from just eye test stuff, it really doesn't look like Taylor Scott is finding the zone. It doesn't look like he feels like his pitches are being competitive. He looks a little shaken at times. We're hoping that whatever tweaks Taylor Scott needs to make to get back to his last season form, he can make that and find that, because frankly, we need him. And Taylor Scott has not fit the bill for the 7th inning reliever in the season so far. And that's kind of where we were penciling him in at. Not completely banking on Taylor Scott being a 7th inning bridge reliever, but hoping that he could kind of be the backup setup man to Brian Abreu, so that when Josh Hader needs to sit a game out and we need to rest Hader, we can have Abreu close and we could have Taylor work more of a setup role. Unfortunately for Taylor Scott, that hasn't seemed to be working for the Astros or Taylor. Lefty Brian King definitely is looking to maybe take that 7th inning role, which would be interesting to have lefty, righty, lefty to go King, Abreu, and Hader. Another person that their stats have looked good and the eye test passes is Stephen Okert. Okert is looking like he's ready to make some noise this season. So why? And we just called up Logan Van Wy. I know it. We all think it reads Logan Van Way, but it's Logan Van Wy. So Logan Van Wy had an excellent spring training. For those of you who weren't following in spring training, we thought that Logan Van Wy was going to make the opening day roster. In fact, when Logan Van Wy didn't make the opening day roster, it was kind of a shock. It was kind of a surprise. So I think Logan Van Wy being called up because of the bullpen issues, and then obviously we learned that Spencer Arrighetti broke his thumb in practice in Seattle. We don't know exactly how long Spencer Arrighetti will be out right now. So Logan Van Wy coming up, helping to bolster that bullpen, also is now a position where Logan Van Wy came up, and now we need to figure out who is going to be that 5th starter in the rotation. Obviously, it looks like it's going to be Ryan Gusto. I apologize. I'm definitely bad at pronunciation. Sometimes it takes me a little while to get a player's name. I definitely don't mean any disrespect, but Gusto, I believe, is the way you pronounce his name. I mean, me gusta Gusto, but the gusto is that Spanish translation that I'm trying to give it. I don't think that's quite right. So I apologize, Mr. Gusto. But that just means that you're invited to the cookout, man. That means you're familia. I'm I'm trying to give you a different pronunciation. I don't mean any disrespect by that. But it does look like Mr. Gusto will be slotting in as that back of the rotation starter, and he looked pretty good in that game the other day where he came in long relief. So we'll have to see what this young man has. We're going to need him to be a JP France style back of the rotation inning eater and help the team compete. I think he has it in him. The Astros have this way of finding new pitchers and finding guys that just completely, seemingly came out of nowhere. Ryan Gusto, famously, we know now, was cut from his high school baseball team multiple times. So he's got that Jordan mentality. Maybe Ryan Gusto took that personally. And maybe he took it so personally, he's going to dominate. Maybe he could be the new arm that this team has found. Because right now we need some starting pitching. It's been a bad turn through the rotation this second time around. I'm not cooling on the Houston rotation by any means. It's the beginning of the season. But, obviously we're in a position now with injuries and with a little bit of a tough go through the rotation where we need some stability. So we are looking for some stability from the Houston Astros here. So yeah, with that being said, back to the game. Brian Abreu came in the rest of the eighth. He gave up a hit. He let the run score that Taylor Scott let on. He also picked up a strikeout. The hit was infuriating because it was fired directly back towards the mound. Brian Abreu, he didn't try to do too much or tried to be a hero or anything and mess the play up, but the ball came right back at him, came back towards his glove. He tried to field it. It ricocheted off of Abreu and kind of just went into no man's land between Pena and Altuve, who started at second this game, for those of you keeping track at home. And it just, if the ball would have ricocheted the right direction, it could have been Astros game. But just like the NCAA championship game, sometimes luck doesn't break your way. And sometimes when that happens, luck doesn't break your way. And then you're sitting there looking at the past chances that you had and saying that was a chance to win the game. Dang it. So the Astros unfortunately lost this one in another heartbreaking day for Houston sports. Obviously, like I said, losing the game, losing the national championship is much more heartbreaking than losing a game of baseball in April to the Seattle Mariners on Big Dumper's bobblehead night. Okay, I'm good for you, Dumper. Good for you, Seattle, on winning a game. But for us, the heartbreak is definitely more basketball related. The team was 0 for 3 with runners in scoring position for those of you keeping it home, left 5 men on base. Altuve stole a base. We're looking at base running for the Houston Astros to be a bigger thing, but there's Altuve always has some real hit and miss base running. That's what I love that about him. I love that he's always trying to be aggressive, even though he might not have that top speed. He's still gonna take his chances, but sometimes that hurts us, sometimes it doesn't. But Altuve got his second stolen base of the year on this game. He also got his third home run, and he is in third place in the league for hits this season, behind Tucker and Bregman, which is frustrating. Tucker and Bregman both winning AL and NL Player of the Week. Flip that and reverse it. That's and then put it respectively. But it's hard to see see that a bit for sure. As Astros fans, as we're kind of struggling out the gate, not quite as bad as last season, but still not exactly the world beaters we were hoping to see. I skeeted out there on Blue Sky, skeet. If you ever want to catch me on Blue Sky, Sunday, sorry, I almost shouted out my other podcast, spacecadetsports.bsky.social. I skeeted out there that it's nice that they finally had a good start to their season. That's real nice. Sadly, it wasn't in an Astros jersey, but, I don't think a lot of people are already ready to bury the Astros. I'm not there. This happens every damn season. Every season since 2019. All of the sports writers come out and they bury the Astros and they say that the Astros are dead. And then towards the summer, they're like, well, maybe we were wrong about the Astros. And then at the end of the season, they're like, oh, God, I hate the Astros. So, folks, until the Astros don't do that, I have complete faith in this team. They're going to have to figure out their offense, though, folks. Sadly, in yesterday's game, the two offensive powerhouses were Jose Altuve and Jake Myers. Jake Myers is out there being a little more patient, finding ways to get on base, running into some hits, and we need that for him. But honestly, I've been saying all season, we can look at the bottom of the lineup. We can look at Myers. We can look at Dubon. We can look at Cam Smith. We can look at Chas McCormick and Brendan Rodgers and point fingers at these guys and be like, they need to play better. But in this offense, in this lineup, these are not the guys that we're expecting to get hits with runners in scoring position from. They're not the guys that we're looking to power this lineup. The guys that we're looking to power this lineup have been struggling. We're looking at you, Yordan Alvarez, Christian Walker, Isaac Paredes, and Yainer Diaz, who's dropping down to the bottom of the lineup because he is really struggling this season. And I'm not saying that these guys are done. Book it. Their seasons are over. Yordan Alvarez is Yordan Alvarez. He's going to figure it out. He's already starting to turn it around. Isaac Paredes has not really found some luck. He looks to be a great hitter. I like Isaac Paredes. I think he's going to be a great Astro, but he is having some trouble finding his footing here on his new team. Christian Walker, my goodness, this guy's an amazing player. I am not betting against this guy. I know he can find his way to higher strikeouts than maybe we would want, but I don't know where this struggle is coming from. Jeremy Pena, he's had a fairly decent start to the year, but we're looking for him to be consistent. He's lacking that consistency right now, and I think really when you look at those players, I wouldn't bet against them. Now, the guy I worry about the most will admittedly is Yainer. I do think he's struggling to find his swing a little bit right now. He looks a little lost at times. I think there has been times last season where where manager Joe Espada would bench Yainer Diaz for a game to kind of reset him. And I don't know what Yainer Diaz needs to get that reset for this week, but we need him to reset. Going forward, the Astros will play Seattle both today, Tuesday night, and Wednesday afternoon. They will be facing off against the Castillos, the Luis Castillos, I should say, the Rock Luis Castillo, who we know and I wouldn't, not hate, but have been frustrated by in the past, and Luis F. Castillo, who is new addition to the team, who is the Pebble because he is a smaller version of the Rock, Luis Castillo's name. So Luis Castillo, Luis F. Castillo. Today it's a TBD for the Astros starting pitcher. We're unsure if it's going to be a bullpen game or if they're going to start Gusto, but we will have to see As of now, it has not been, as of the recording of this podcast, it hasn't officially been announced. We'll see who will go up against Luis Castillo. But, I said that they would win 2 games out of the series. Yesterday was truly one that I thought they were going to win. Today, I think the Astros are going to have to really rally behind this bullpen game of sorts, depending on how it kind of settles out. They're going to have to rally behind their pitching. They're going to have to really get some hits and focus up and not leave men on base. They're going to have to play very, very efficiently is what I'm trying to say. They're going to have to bring the boys home. They've been playing against some really efficient offenses themselves, but they need to be efficient as a team here to win this game. I think Luis Castillo is a tough pitcher, but he also, I think his fastball isn't quite what it used to be, and I'm not saying he's fallen completely off, but I think he's a little bit more hittable than he has in the past. If the Astros can connect on those fastballs, if they can work some long counts without striking out, my goodness, they've been getting longer counts, and it's good to see, but their strikeouts have been high this season. If they could do that without striking out, they can win this game and fight tomorrow for the rubber match. Moving on to the Houston Rockets before we wrap up this episode. The Houston Rockets beat the Golden State Warriors, and since that happened, everybody in the basketball world and on the internet has been complaining about Steph Curry and how they're roughing up Steph Curry. They're fouling Steph Curry. Oh man, they're not letting him play basketball. It's so funny to hear that from Warriors fans after seasons and years of seeing them not only get like the nicest calls ever from the refs, but just Draymond out there literally kicking people in the nuts, clawing James Harden's eyes out, playing literally despicable basketball. Draymond Green plays basketball more like a wrestler. He does things to hurt people. And this fan base is out here saying that, oh, this tough defense is too tough. Grow up, man. Like, yeah, some of that stuff might have been fouls, but that's tough defense. And you're only crying about it because you lost. You sound like a loser. Cut it out. And yeah, I think it's so funny. Already, the Rockets went from being one of the most fun teams to watch on League Pass, and in just one game where they were mean to Steph Curry, now they're villains. Grow up, man. Like, it's so silly. I'm with Coach Ime. He had a quote saying, when they start complaining about physicality and fouls, that's when you've won. Yeah, they got in their head. They're making the Golden State Warriors go out there and have say a bunch of excuses in the media. It seems weak to come out there with just a bunch of excuses. It's a regular season game. If this was a playoff game, okay, I'd understand it a little more, them going out there and complaining about the refs. Not that they should complain about the refs, but they're just trying to save face from losing a big game. They're out here complaining about a game that isn't a playoff game in April. Grow up. Grow up. I think it's hilarious. I think it's absolutely hilarious. And honestly, I know a lot of people are worried about the playoff matchups, but it would make me happy to see the Rockets match up against the Warriors and just stomp them in a 7-game series. It really would. I'm not trying to sit out here and be like, Warriors, come out and play. But I am saying, I ain't scared of the Warriors. And definitely not scared of that weak-ass trash talk they have over there. Folks, I want to know what you think. Let me know what you think about the Rockets. If you think that fouling was a little bit too much, if you think the Warriors fans are complaining too much, let me know what you think about the Astros, if you think they're going to take this series like I think. And also, let me know what you think about the Cougars. They had a great season. I love them. I love them. I do. I love the Cougars. They are such a great team. We're definitely mourning them a little bit today. How are your emotions? Check in with me. Let me know how you're doing, folks. And with that being said, we're going to go ahead and that's going to do it for this transmission, Space Cadets. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. Please hit a bunch of buttons for me wherever you are listening to this on. Please like, rate, review, subscribe, share, pop it, kick it, skip it, smash all of those buttons for me wherever you're listening to this on. We are a small podcast and only go as far as our listenership takes us. We are supported by listeners like you. So please share with a Houston fan or Australian in your life and give us a 5-star rating wherever you listen. Also check out the Substack at spacecadetsports.substack.com, where you can put your email into that field. You get every article, every podcast, and every meme dump that I put on the Substack right now for free. That's right, nothing's behind a paywall right now on the Substack. I just want to talk Houston sports with y'all and want to have some fun doing it. Reach out on social media at Space Cadet Sports on Instagram and Threads, or where we're more active on Blue Sky, where you can read those skeets at spacecadetsports.bsky.social. Let me know your opinions. You can give me a comment on the Substack or on social media, or you can call in. Obviously, you can't do it live, but you can leave me a voicemail on SpeakPipe. That's speakpipe.com/spacecadetsports. Leave me a voicemail. Let me know your take. If it isn't too profane or crazy, I might even put it on the podcast. If you're like me and you want more weird jokes, you're in your emotions because of Houston sports, find me on social media making jokes, memes, art, podcasts, and more. That's at paulsalazarjr.bsky.social or at paulsalazarjr on all social media platforms. You can find my website at paulsalazarjr.net, because I'm nothing but net, not because I'm in a legal dispute. Not even a legal dispute, not because somebody is trying to sell me paulsalazarjr.com. Find my other Substack for all of my other nonsense if you're nasty. Merch is officially here. You can check that out on the website and on the Substack as well. Thank you so much for listening. I need to go get some coffee. I need to go find some joy in my life. I am going to go do something that brings me joy in this world. Remember to be the best that you can be. Keep your head up, kid. And as always, vamos Houston.